Rome, 1500, a moonless night. The Tiber River silently carries a body, one of many that will earn it the nickname, the Silent Confessor. In the torchlit chambers of the Vatican, a man studies maps of Italy with the cold precision of a surgeon planning an incision. His name is feared in whispers across the peninsula, Cesare Borgia. Welcome to Renaissance Italy, a chessboard where power flows like poison between city-states, where politics and murder are intimate bedfellows, and where one family has mastered this deadly game above all others, the Borgias. Today, we're dissecting the mind of history's most controversial political operator, the man whose calculating brilliance so impressed Niccolò Machiavelli that he became the blueprint for The Prince, Machiavelli's most famous and influential work. A man who, in just 6 short years, nearly conquered an empire through strategy, deception, and precisely calculated violence. What made Cesare Borgia so effective? How did he transform from an unwanted cardinal into Italy's most formidable warlord? And what fatal miscalculation ultimately undid his meteoric rise? By examining Borgia's tactical genius through the prism of Stoic philosophy, we'll uncover timeless insights about power, control, and the double-edged nature of ambition that remain profoundly relevant today. This isn't just the story of one Renaissance warlord. It's an exploration of the eternal tension between tactical brilliance and ethical wisdom that shapes leaders in every era. Act 1. The cardinal who would be king. Imagine being groomed from birth for a role you despise. This was Cesare Borgia's reality, forced into cardinal's robes at just 18, while watching his younger brother Juan flaunt the military position he coveted. Born in 1475 as the illegitimate son of Cardinal Rodrigo Borgia and his mistress Vanozza dei Catani, Cesare's path seemed predetermined. His father, later Pope Alexander VI, mapped out his children's lives like military campaigns. Daughter Lucrezia for strategic marriages, son Juan for military glory, and Cesare for church power. But beneath the cardinal's robes beat the heart of a conqueror. While officially serving the church, Cesare obsessively studied military tactics, political strategy, and the art of manipulation. He was preparing for an opportunity that seemed impossible until fate intervened. In 1497, his brother Juan was murdered, his body dumped in the Tiber River. While history has never conclusively identified the killer, many suspected Cesare himself. As historian Ferdinand Gregorovius noted, Cesare hated his brother, and his brother's advancement stood in his path. With Juan gone, Cesare made an unprecedented move. In 1498, he petitioned to resign his cardinalate, something virtually unheard of. When his father approved this request, it sent shockwaves through Renaissance society. The cardinal had shed his religious skin to reveal the warrior beneath. What's remarkable from a philosophical perspective is the calculated patience Cesare displayed. For years, he had hidden his true ambitions, meticulously preparing for a moment of opportunity while projecting the image of the dutiful son. This reflects the Stoic principle articulated centuries earlier by Epictetus. Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. Cesare had identified exactly what was in his power, his knowledge, his preparation, his timing. And when the moment arrived, he struck with decisive force. Within months of shedding his cardinal's robes, he had transformed into a military commander, married into the French royal family through Charlotte d'Albret, and secured the backing of the French king Louis XII. The stage was set for one of the most remarkable military campaigns of the Renaissance, one that would demonstrate Cesare's unparalleled grasp of both strategy and psychological warfare. Act 2. The Romagna campaigns, the art of calculated terror. The conquest of Romagna revealed Cesare Borgia's genius in full. Rather than relying solely on brute force, he orchestrated a campaign that combined military precision, psychological manipulation, and strategic clemency and cruelty. His approach to capturing the fortress city of Imola demonstrates this perfectly. Rather than a costly frontal assault, Cesare first isolated the city diplomatically, cutting off potential allies. He then positioned his artillery in a dramatic show of force while simultaneously sending envoys offering generous terms for surrender. When the city capitulated without bloodshed, he kept his word precisely, protecting citizens from his soldiers and maintaining strict discipline. This pattern, threat, negotiation, honorable treatment of those who surrendered, and ruthless example-making of those who resisted allowed him to conquer city after city with minimal bloodshed and expense. As Machiavelli observed, Cesare Borgia was accounted cruel. Nevertheless, this cruelty had brought order to the Romagna, united it, and reduced it to peace and fealty. Perhaps most revealing was his capture of Urbino. Rather than announcing his intentions, Cesare requested passage through the territory with his army, claiming he was marching elsewhere. When granted permission by the unsuspecting Duke Guidobaldo, Cesare's forces suddenly turned and seized the city in a single night, without a single casualty. This strategic brilliance displayed remarkable Stoic elements, particularly the focus on efficiency over emotion and on achieving objectives through intelligence rather than force whenever possible. As Marcus Aurelius advised, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. For Cesare, unnecessary violence was inefficient. He used precisely the amount of force required, no more and no less. But there was also a shadow side to his strategy, exemplified in his treatment of Ramiro de Lorqua. After appointing Ramiro as his harsh governor to establish order in the Romagna, Cesare had him publicly executed and his body cut in two, a calculated move to shift blame for the harsh methods onto Ramiro while positioning himself as a just ruler. This dual nature, the strategic brilliance alongside moral flexibility, makes Cesare such a complex figure when viewed through a philosophical lens. He mastered certain Stoic principles like emotional discipline and strategic clarity, while completely abandoning others, particularly justice and virtue. Act 3. The Sinigaglia Masterpiece. December 31st, 1502. The date of what Machiavelli would later call the magnificent deception of Sinigaglia. This single event, more than any other, cemented Cesare's reputation and provided the central example for Machiavelli's political theories. The situation was precarious. Cesare's mercenary captains, the Orsini, Vitellozzo Vitelli, and Oliverotto da Fermo, had rebelled against him, forming an alliance called La Lega. These were hardened condottieri, who had helped Cesare conquer much of central Italy but now threatened everything he had built. Rather than rushing to battle, Cesare employed what would become his signature approach: psychological manipulation combined with flawless timing. He first sowed discord in the alliance by negotiating separately with different members. Once they were divided, he pretended to reconcile, inviting them to discuss terms at Sinigaglia. Contemporary accounts describe what happened next with awe. Cesare greeted each captain warmly, embracing men he had already decided to eliminate. His face revealed nothing of his intentions as he invited them into his apartments for a private discussion. Once inside, his guards seized them. That same evening, Vitelli and Oliverotto were strangled. The Orsini leaders were killed days later. With this single stroke, Cesare eliminated his greatest internal threat and consolidated his power. What astounded observers was not just the plan's effectiveness, but Cesare's perfect composure throughout its execution. As one witness noted, the Duke's countenance betrayed no emotion. He spoke with the same calm voice with which he discussed hunting just hours before. This emotional control reflects the Stoic teaching that mastering one's emotions is essential to clear thinking. As Seneca wrote, "The greatest empire is to be emperor of oneself." Cesare had achieved this mastery to a degree that both impressed and terrified his contemporaries. Yet here again, we see the contradiction in Cesare's relationship with Stoic principles. His tactical brilliance and emotional control were worthy of the greatest Stoic philosophers, but his willingness to betray and murder allies violated the core Stoic virtues of justice and faith. This contradiction would ultimately prove fatal to his ambitions. Act 4. The Downfall, Fortune's Revenge. August 1503 marked the unexpected turning point in Cesare's meteoric rise. Pope Alexander VI, his father and key supporter, suddenly died, likely from malaria. By cruel coincidence, Cesare himself was seriously ill at the same time, unable to act during the critical power transition. This moment revealed the fundamental flaw in Cesare's approach. Despite his tactical genius, he had built his power on an unstable foundation: his father's position. When that foundation vanished, his carefully constructed empire began to crumble. Cesare found himself in a radically altered political landscape. His enemies were regrouping, his allies abandoning him, and the new pope, Julius II, was openly hostile to Borgia interests. What followed was a desperate series of maneuvers as Cesare tried to salvage his position. But without his father's backing, his leverage was severely diminished. Former subjects rebelled, territories were lost, and former allies turned against him. In 1504, he was arrested on orders of Pope Julius II and later transferred to Spanish custody. The man who had once ruled central Italy died in 1507 at just 31 years old, fighting as a minor captain in a petty Spanish conflict. Far from the empire he had nearly established, this downfall reveals a profound philosophical lesson. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus emphasized the importance of distinguishing between what we can control and what we cannot. Cesare mastered control of his emotions, his strategic thinking, and his immediate actions. But he failed to build foundations that could withstand events beyond his control, particularly the timing of his father's death. As Seneca cautioned, "No man can have a peaceful life who thinks too much about lengthening it." Cesare was so focused on expanding his power that he neglected to secure what he had already gained. His failure to establish institutional support, legitimate authority, or genuine loyalty beyond fear meant that his achievements remained personally bound to him and his father. Act 5, Legacy and Lessons, The Prince's Shadow. Though Cesare's state collapsed, his methods created an enduring intellectual legacy through Machiavelli's The Prince. Machiavelli, who had observed Cesare closely during diplomatic missions, was clearly fascinated by the man, writing, "I cannot think of better precepts to give a new prince than ones derived from Cesare's actions. But what should we modern observers take from this complex legacy? What lessons can Cesare Borgia's rise and fall teach us about power, strategy, and human nature?" First, his tactical brilliance demonstrates the power of strategic clarity and emotional control. In any endeavor, the ability to separate emotion from decision-making, to think several moves ahead, and to adapt quickly to changing circumstances remains invaluable. Second, his downfall reveals the danger of building on unstable foundations. True security, whether in politics, business, or personal relationships, comes not from temporary advantage, but from legitimate structures that can withstand inevitable shifts in circumstance. Third, Cesare's story highlights the ultimate inadequacy of fear as a management tool. While fear produced short-term compliance, it failed to generate the loyalty he desperately needed when fortune turned against him. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, Cesare's legacy demonstrates the fundamental tension between tactical efficiency and ethical wisdom. His methods were undeniably effective in the short term, but ultimately self-defeating because they violated basic principles of human trust and cooperation. This is perhaps where Stoicism offers its most valuable insight. While the philosophy certainly values discipline, emotional control, and clear thinking, qualities Cesare possessed in abundance, it insists these must serve virtue, not replace it. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." Cesare Borgia mastered the tactical elements of power, but neglected its ethical foundations. He could control his own emotions perfectly, but failed to understand the emotions of others beyond fear. He could conquer territory brilliantly, but couldn't build lasting institutions. And ultimately, that's why his dramatic rise was matched by an equally dramatic fall. Conclusion, the eternal question. What makes Cesare Borgia's story so enduring is that it forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about power and ethics that remain relevant in every age. Was he simply a product of his brutal times, adopting the methods necessary to survive in Renaissance Italy's political jungle? Or did his ruthlessness ultimately undermine the very power he sought to build? Could a leader in his position have achieved similar results while maintaining stronger ethical foundations? Or does the pursuit of power inevitably corrupt those who seek it most aggressively? These questions have no simple answers, which is precisely why Cesare Borgia continues to fascinate us 5 centuries after his death. His story serves as both inspiration and warning, a testament to human strategic brilliance and a cautionary tale about the limits of power divorced from principle. As we navigate our own complex world of power dynamics, competitive pressures, and ethical challenges. Cesare's paradox remains instructive. The most effective tactics may achieve short-term objectives while undermining long-term success. The most impressive control over others often comes at the cost of losing control over oneself. And perhaps most importantly, the most lasting power rarely comes from force or fear, but from building something worthy of freely given loyalty. Something Cesare Borgia, for all his tactical genius, never quite understood. I'll leave you with this final thought. In your own pursuit of excellence and achievement, which elements of Cesare's approach are worth emulating, and which represent warnings to heed? The tactical brilliance or the ethical flexibility? The strategic vision or the reliance on fear? The answers to these questions don't just reveal our understanding of history, they shape our own approach to power, leadership, and ultimate legacy. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and stay tuned for our next exploration of history's most complex and compelling figures.